Hello, everyone. I am so honored to once again talk about one of my favorite topics. People have heard me talk about data products and data fabric a lot. And today I actually get to hang out with one company that has been in the news because they are spearheading this development of data products and adoption of data fabrics, but not just the fact that they are known for the products, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard of this company. The name of the company is Promethium, Promethium.ai, but also because of two new recent developments in the past couple of weeks. The first one was that this company and the product got chosen by Gartner as a cool vendor, which is a huge testament to the work they do. And the second thing is that now they have a brand new leadership. And some of my friends are now running and taking this company to the new level. Casey Lai has been known to this community as a prolific person in the space of data products. He is the chief strategy officer. I let the team introduce themselves and talk about what's changed. Prat, let's start with you.
Sure. First off, thanks for inviting us, Sanjeev. It's great to reconnect with you on your podcast. You're everywhere, and you're like going to be
I'm just having fun.
a data product evangelist, and
Thank you.
we've worked for many years. So I'm Prat Moghe now. I'm joined as the CEO of Promethium, and really excited to team up with Casey Lai, who's our founder, fearless founder, and Chief Strategy Officer. Durgesh?
Yeah, I'm Durgesh Mankekar, and I joined about 4 months ago. Initially, I joined as a principal architect, and I'm happy to take over as a VP of engineering. Yep.
That is great. I have worked with both of you before, Prat, from your days at Casino. I remember first time I saw you was in 2016 or 2017 at the A16Z offices, and then you were with Cloudera. So the question I have for you is, why did you choose to join Prometheum as a CEO? And just overall, what is the problem that people are facing in data analytics that attracted you to this area?
Yeah, no, thanks. Yeah, so first off, again, just my background, like you mentioned, like I've been in the data and analytics space now for, I hate to date myself, but almost 20 years now. So I ran the product line at Netezza as IBM acquired Netezza and ended up scaling that, working with some of the leaders at IBM, had a great time there. And then Casino was the first SaaS, essentially offering for all data lakes and data lake houses. So essentially the idea of bringing SaaS to any engine so that you could simplify it and take care of DevOps, the DevOps drag. And then I had the good fortune of working with the Cloudera leaders, including Rob Bearden and others, in terms of bringing that to the market and scaling that, and ran Cloud there as the EVP of Cloudera. After Cloudera, I took a break, and then I was advising a variety of early stage startups, and I was always intrigued about this problem of how do you take this complex stack end to end, acquisition to prep to like the modern data stack, and then simplify it so that more and more non-technical teams can start to leverage the enterprise data. And at the same time, when AI came in a big way in the last 2 years, it sort of changed everything. And so the traditional modern data stack and the complexity of pipelines, I viewed as not being able to solve the problem when a business user says, I want direct access to data. So if any person can do ChatGPT on public data, why can't an enterprise business user, like just take a sales person, a RevOps person, or in marketing or finance, why can't they directly interact with enterprise data? If you just do that thought experiment, what is bizarre is that it's very hard to do because today, as you know, the data is heterogeneous. It's not any single data is messed up, so it's very hard to bring context and relevance to it. And then the last piece is you got to learn the esoteric parts of how to connect, how to access, how to which is SQL. So, and most business users don't understand SQL. So we saw that there were a variety of very interesting open problems that are open today, and I was very intrigued about it when I first had met up with KC and got connected. And again, we have some top-notch investors in Promethium, Insight Partners. Ganesh Bell is on our board. Again, has been a veteran. Graham from 406, again, has been a veteran in the data space. Jocelyn from Zeta, who was a product leader at Meta, and then before that at VMware, she's on the board. So when we got connected and we were jamming, I would have exactly been solving, if I had to do a startup again, I would have been actually solving the Prometheum problem. And so when I met up with Casey and I saw the demo of what he has built, essentially with the rest of the team, we call them Prometheans. I was like, it was instantaneous, where I was like, hey, this is exactly the experience. And obviously, there's a lot more work to be done in terms of like bringing it to the market and scaling it. And with AI, we felt like the experience could be further simplified. That felt like the right match, Sandeep. So long answer.
No.
I sort of we can bring that ChatGPT experience to the enterprise, and we think we can do that by having a data fabric on the back end, and then the new development, which we're calling data copilot, on the front end. We are actually announcing. Actually, we are announcing it on your podcast, and it's actually going live as an announcement on.
Very nice. So we have a copilot coming up. So it's a
data copilot, whichever you call it.
So trifecta of data fabric, data products with a copilot as a natural language interface instead of all because like you said, business people don't necessarily need to know SQL and shouldn't be expected to know SQL. I am very curious to actually dive deep with Durgesh on what is a data fabric. But before I go there, I'm intrigued. You mentioned Prometheums. Can you educate us on what is the etymology behind the name Promethium?
Yeah, it's very, very interesting, actually. So firstly, Promethium is an element, right? Atomic number 61, number of protons in its nucleus. But again, that's one intriguing thing. The other one is that Prometheus, as everyone from understanding their Greek mythologies, gave the knowledge from the gods to the humans. So there is this whole aspect of democratizing.
I see.
And making it easy for business users, non-technical users like data teams. And that's our mission. So it's very much in our blood. And a person on the Promethium team, we call them Promethean. So we refer to ourselves as the Prometheans. So that's our mission.
I see. Very nice. So let's get into the meat of this. So Durgesh, congratulations on your new role as VP of Engineering. There are so many definitions of data fabric. How do you define what a data fabric is? And is there a difference in your thinking of data fabric versus what we hear others talk about?
Yes, thank you, thanks for the question and the wishes. So to me, at least, data fabric is more of a scalable data architecture or a data platform that allows you to connect to heterogeneous data sources. We know all enterprises have all of their data is not in a single data warehouse. It's made of data warehouses, lake houses, data lakes, RDBMS, CRMs, and so on. So being able to actually use a platform that unifies all of this without having to move data from one place to the other. Because the reason is when you want to create any insights or when you want to have or enable any self-service analytics, the bottleneck is always, oh, I need to move this data from form A to form B, from C, and then curate it until it becomes a consumable product. And while you're doing this, you also need to follow all kinds of governance rules, whether they are security rules, whether they're formatting rules, privacy rules. All of these things basically need to be covered by the platform. And that's what we call as a data fabric, connecting not only various sources, applying these access rules, but also being able to to allow these data to be consumed by various BI tools or integration systems or pipeline tools in a uniform way.
I see. So Durgesh, from what I'm hearing from you, the question that came to my mind was, how is it different from data federation, where some of the principles you mentioned?
Right. Yeah. So especially the virtualization part, what we call data virtualization, where you actually get to connect to multiple data sources,
Yep.
that
Yep.
you can actually consider has a very good overlap with federation. But
Okay.
there's more to that. Yeah, being able to actually expose this data in a controlled form, in a governed form, and be able
Okay.
to create products self-service. Again, I think the ease of use with which we can create these data products, and I'm sure we'll get into the data product
Yeah, that's next.
is, but it's not just getting the platform federated. It's
I
being
see.
able to create the self-service analytic product as easily as possible and make it consumable
Hmm.
quickly throughout the enterprise. That's the goal.
And one thing I could add is also uh, they're deeply rooted, I think, of Fabric in this idea of having an active metadata catalog, the ability basically to bring 360 context from users in the front, heterogeneous data sources on the back, leveraging the ecosystem that exists where there is already context,
Hmm.
pulling it together so that when somebody says, "Hey, I want access to revenue information," I'm interested in understanding why revenue is dropping in this territory here. If that's the question, there's already 100 tables in Snowflake, and then
Hmm.
there's some data sitting on S3, which has relevant information, and there is some data sitting here somewhere on Teradata, or there is some data in Salesforce, and you're trying to sort of figure out how to combine it. Being able to boost the fidelity and being able to figure out the signal from the noise is the key.
I see.
The data
Okay.
fabric should be, like Durgesh was saying, about going and building that context beyond federated querying, being able to put that context on top, and then to be able to bring something back to the end user or the data team person, and then being able to iterate that. That's to us
Got it.
what
Okay.
a data
So what I'm understanding is from both of you, what you said was data virtualization is more of an engineering sort of like connecting the wires and how you do it. But data virtualization needs a layer on top, which is through a metadata catalog with the context, with the semantics, and also with the security applied. And then on top of that, the ease through which you create, you said data products, so people can consume that data. Is
Yep,
that,
exactly.
100%.
Yep.
I see. So let's talk about data products. So Durgesh, I'm going to stay with you because I'm very curious. What is a data product in your mind? By the way, I'm asking this earnestly because I joke about this. I've written Medium blogs. I've written a book called Data Products for Dummies. People read that and then they come to me and say, I have a question. What is a data product? So it
So
just, yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah. So for me, the funny story is that like 4 months ago or 5 months ago, when Pratt pitched the idea of
Yeah.
Prometheum, first thing I went and I checked, I searched for what is a data product, and your blog post came up as the first link. So if this all of my concept seems familiar, then you know who to.
Thank you.
So I think
You can
again,
blame me. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So I think a data product, at least to me, is generally a curated and governed data sets or set of data sets that you can actually extract from multiple heterogeneous data sources. Being able to extract insights using very user-friendly business semantics instead of SQL or getting to the physical data layer. Um, it could always be combined with visualizations, but that's not the only goal. So you have data sets, you have visualizations and dashboards. You could have an interactive user experience
Hmm.
that goes with it. So I think the two key areas that I have learned a data product needs to achieve is a good user experience, and
Hmm.
the data sets need to be reliable. They need to
Yep.
be trustworthy. Because if they're not trustworthy, if they're not following set of governance rules, then again, no one is going to actually start believing those insights that it's exposing. And once you have these data products, I think another key area that I feel is really important is they need to be easily discoverable. Because anytime a question comes from a CDO, if the data analyst always has to start from scratch, that's a lot of wasted time. If the data products have already been created, and as long as they are refreshed, and as long as they are exposed through this
Yeah.
governed API, they should be easily discoverable. So if they are cataloged and could be easily found, I think that's another thing that is very, very important for data catalog and for it to be a data product.
If I could,
Go
if I
ahead.
could add, the other thing also is part of this is the life cycle management of those data products. So when a data product is shared, and this is, I think, a key part of, again, what a data fabric or a data product platform should do is it's a collaborative platform between the data teams and the business teams. So when those data products are surfaced, like the catalog, like Durgesh was saying, is the business person looking at it and saying, I endorse it, I don't endorse it. This was not really relevant. That's super. Bring it back into the metadata layer. How is it being shared? That is the other question. Just because one business user likes something, the next business user asks a question. If it is similar to this data product, can we leverage it again? Can we augment it, right? So there's this whole question of proximity. If something has been certified, validated, posted,
Yeah.
a lot of work. So you don't want to go back to this thing where you're going back to data engineering, all to the pipeline data analysis. So I think this kind of a flywheel, we've seen this we've heard it many places where people are like, hey, I brought all my data to Snowflake. I opened it up to all these business users. Now, guess what? I got 1,000 reports in Tableau.
Yeah.
And time somebody asks a question, we are again going back to Snowflake and doing this thing again. So there's no governance. There's a swamp. So either the swamp is in terms of where the data is, or the swamp is in terms of the reports that are on the business side. So having a data product layer in between those warehouses and the business allows you to basically come up with a set of filtered, curated view that Durgesh was saying. The advantage of that is it's a flywheel, because every time you put something in front of the business user, they may actually look at it and say, wow, this is exactly the question I wanted to ask, this is this is something that I think our dashboards don't cover, but is an insight that should go into the next set of dashboards. And now let's use this to go create it. So I think the life cycle management of a data product, very key
So
part of
it's
it.
lifecycle management also when the consumer goes to the data product. So they can discover it, the ease of use is there, all that is great. But then there's also some sense of accountability, right? Like you know who the owner is of that dashboard. So something is not correct, there's a single person to go to. Is that how you
Yeah,
see it?
100%. And by the way, I don't think today there's a lot of products or experiences that deliver that. So this is one of those areas where it's a collaborative thing between business and data, and I don't think it exists. There's definitely a lot of work
Yeah.
to.
So talking about what exists and what does not, although you have a data fabric, but I do want to bring an 800-pound gorilla into our discussion, and that's Microsoft. Microsoft has gotten a lot of traction. I hear about Microsoft Fabric a lot. They have all these massive events. There's one right after Big Data London in Sweden that a lot of people were going to. There was one in summer in Vegas. I'm not sure how much are you involved with Microsoft Fabric, but my question to you, Prat, is how does Prometheum's data fabric differ from Microsoft Fabric? And are there different types of fabrics that we should think about, like a taxonomy?
Great question. So first off, I'll take this question in a more generic way, which is
Okay.
that Fabric's not a new creation. Data fabrics have been around for the last almost a decade now, right? Or close to a decade. And so the architecturally, a data fabric essentially has those principles that Durgesh covered. And there's several architectures in the market, including Microsoft and several others. What I would say is that in general, the problem that a fabric was intended to solve was this problem of heterogeneous data, can't get enough quick business insight when you want it, don't want to move the data into a single place. And so Fabric was intended to create like literally a fabric on top of this heterogeneous data, cover it, and give you insights. And so what we see is there's lots of architectures, and those architectures in general are driven, most of them are driven by data platform owners, whether it's a cloud provider, whether it's somebody who has a data warehouse, somebody has a lake house. So there is very much a vested interest in those architectures that, look, I can connect to all the data sources you want, and I can give you that thing. But you get far better performance and cost and reuse if this data moved to my platform, because I got really, really sophisticated tools sitting on my platform, because it's my platform, right? I have better governance, I can apply all these rules, I can give you better context, all of those kind of reasons. So even if the architecture says that, thou shalt not move the data should be where it is, and it should stay heterogeneous. The reality is that most of those architectures are biased towards moving the data in a certain place. That's number one. The second thing is, when you notice these architectures, they are usually focused on the back end, all the things you talked about, right? Federated querying, virtualization, moving the data to a certain place. They have not traditionally focused on the consumption layer. And just in the piece that they do, because it's so intensive and their architectures, they have required a lot of services. So you need a consultant, you need strategists, you need lots of people, and they're typically not, their architectures, they're not turnkey. So the main distinction from Promethium versus some of these architectures is Promethium's offering, we call it the instant data fabric. Okay, so for instant is exactly what it is, which is that with Promethium, it's all turnkey, end to end. This is a single workflow. It's already built, it's automated, so it can deploy in minutes. And you don't need a consultant, you don't need SIs to come and assemble it. It's all built. And so you can deploy it literally, and you can say, go connect to Snowflake, go connect to Azure, go connect on-prem, go to different sources, go to Cloudera, go to Teradata, go to Salesforce. And by the way, immediately it can start to connect, it can start to build the context, it can start to help you start to build data products. So the speed and the agility and the cost is like radically different, like a tenth, right, of what you would say as a TCO of this platform. And then the new thing that, and then the second distinction is the ease of use, which is with Promethium, the instant data fabric, you have a single workflow. So you can literally get on the platform and you can say, I have a question, pose the question, the question gets connected to discovery, goes to all the data sources, then comes back, and now you've created a data product and it's published, and you can now collaborate with the business. So this concept of a single end-to-end workflow, I have not seen in the space, because these are typically silos where you require collaboration. And then the last piece is with the new copilot that we're now announcing, it sort of takes the ease of use even further. And Durgesh can explain to you what the copilot does. But in a nutshell, the main difference is that there are architectures that require assembly and services, whereas Prometheus is essentially an instant data fabric that is a product, and essentially it goes very quick. And so you're essentially both on agility and cost. It's a tenth of a factor versus other architectures.
Yeah, I would say we actually deliver on the promise of not having to move the data.
Yeah, yes. And also thinking about it, like why are you doing this to begin with? It's not, the goal was not just to connect with the data. The goal is ultimately to somebody's question, the consumption layer. By the way, in some cases, you asked about the taxonomy question. Some of these data fabrics, enterprises that invested in these data fabrics, they're calling them query fabrics, just to be clear.
Right.
Query fabric is focused on the back end. And now when they're looking at Promethium, they're like, wow, like I spent all this time figuring out how to go connect across these heterogeneous sources. Guess what? But I didn't even think about the consumption problem, right? When they look at Promethium, they're like, wow, you guys have thought through this end to end. So in some of them, they're even thinking about layering Promethium on top of some of these fabrics that because we can you look at them as just another data source.
Yeah. So basically, businesses care about only a couple of things. One is how quickly can they start driving decisions from the data, and how easy is it to interact with data. So those are the two important things. And then, of course, they want that data should be high quality, reliable, and secure with all the compliances. So you're addressing that speed of decisions and this amazing user experience that makes it very easy to use. So, which is very interesting because another hot topic, probably one of the hottest topics in the data space, is actually Apache Iceberg, open table formats. Icebergs, especially getting a lot of traction. So, but that is, you move the data into a lake house and then you put this table format on top. So, do you see the data fabric and lakehouse paradigms are in opposite directions, or do you see them coming together?
I I mean, I think they work together very well. Like for example, Prometheum's data fabric supports the Iceberg format and can work with any Iceberg catalogs, whether it's Unity catalog from um, or Polaris from Databricks or Snowflake. We can work easily with those. So I don't see that as a kind of a differentiator. It is
Hmm.
basically how data fabric can work with any kinds of data sources, including Iceberg or Delta Lakes and anything like that.
Got it. So Durgesh, we have already started slicing the layers of data fabric. We talk about data virtualization as being sort of kind of the connectivity engine, if I may. What are the other parts? What are the components of Prometheum's data fabric?
Absolutely. So again, data virtualization, as we talked about, is kind of the lowest level of connector. So we have all these connectors for data sources that, whether they are RDBMS or lake houses, data lakes, cloud systems, or CRM systems. So we have connectors for those. So that's the base level, which is data virtualization. On top of that, what is really important is governance. We talked about product needs to be secure and reliable. So they need to follow certain business rules and certain business semantics. So making sure the data governance and security is applied uniformly so that if you want to find where the rules are, you go into one place instead of having to look at every data product, how each data product was constructed differently. I think the third very important characteristic or a component is it has to enable self-service analytics.
Hmm.
That's the holy grail, because if you need a huge team of data engineers and data scientists and to construct data products, usually the product dies by the time it's considered useful. So I think having that ability to create analytics and data products on the fly really quickly, I think that's what differentiates the data fabric from Prometheum.
Got it.
In addition to that, we talked about the data catalog. It needs to have this active metadata. It's not just someone tagging information in a static catalog, but how the catalog is actually evolving based on usage patterns. So if someone actually published it frequently, then we think, okay, it's a very useful product that needs to be used by others as well, or needs to be augmented. So getting that feedback loop from the usage and maintaining this metadata in a dynamic way, which we call it active metadata. That's again one more very, very key aspect, including its lineage. So it's not important. It's not just that, okay, you got the data, you create the product, but being able to trace the lineage of that actually
Mhm.
adds a lot of value in terms of whether I want to trust the data or not if I don't know where it originated from. Also knowing all the transformation logic that went into it. The last part is, again, as we had talked about, it's not just the platform, it's the consumption, right? If it's only useful if it can be consumed very easily and it gives the business insights to drive the business outcomes. So being able to publish these data products very, very easily to all kinds of interfaces, whether it's a user interface, an API, being able to connect your IDEs, being able to connect your BI tools. I think that's the consumption part of the data fabric that we think Prometheum brings to the table. And on top of that, I'm sure we'll get into it. With the advent of AI and LLMs, we have this amazing opportunity to make this very, very simple to generate these data products going forward.
So let's talk more about that because it's actually amazing how we've gone halfway into this conversation and we haven't even mentioned the word AI. But thanks for bringing that up. And you also announced today that you're coming out with a copilot. Can you talk more, give us some in-depth view
Yeah.
into the copilot?
Yep. So absolutely. So I'm super excited that we are bringing this again LLM a model on top of the fantastic data fabric that Prometheum already provides. So we already have this platform. Now what we need to do is make it easy to consume. So the data product copilot is an interactive user experience. So let's say your persona is a data analyst and you get a business question and you need to create a data product. Instead of having to dig through all the data that you have access to, instead of having to figure out which of this data and which of the rules I need to follow to create this data product, you can actually ask this question in natural language.
Hmm.
And the Copilot could actually split your question into a chain of smaller questions that could be addressed as set of data sets, visualizations, integration points, pipelines, and so on. So being able to get all the rich context that the data fabric provides. So the rich context is your schemas, the active metadata we talked about, the semantic models that you might have access to, your past query history, how frequently a previous data product has been used and has been augmented. All of that information now we can actually feed into our agentic architecture to create these very, very easy to consume products. Uh, Being able to not just generate the data products, but being able to reason about them, I think is also critical because that's when your consumers are going to trust the product more if you can actually tell them how exactly you constructed the data product. So the possibilities I find like endless, and I'm super excited how the Copilot will make it super
Yeah.
easy
So
for the
Durgesh, yeah, I'm not sure how much in depth you can go expose the technology piece. So I totally respect if you cannot. But the geek in me is very curious to see when I ask a question in natural language that is converted to a vector embedding. Where do you store the vector embedding? Do you have a vector database that's built in? And what models are called? Are you calling open source models or proprietary models, LLMs?
I think excellent question. Okay, I'm ready to nerd out. So,
Okay.
uh, so yes, I think to answer your question, the answer is actually yes. Yes, we use a vector database. Yes, we are also using possibly a version of a graph database if we need to
Okay.
run more complex relationships like semantic modeling. But at the top of it, it's essentially a model of agents. So as you know, agents are basically LLMs with
Mhm.
certain tools. So as I talked about giving this sophisticated, rich context, because more sophisticated context you give, business context you give to the LLMs, better results you're going to get, less hallucination you're going to get. The results are going to be more trustworthy and they will be more, they're just easy to reason about, right? So I think getting that, that's why we are invested in this agentic architecture of tools.
Can you give any names of products? And then we'll stop and move on to other topics.
Yeah,
But
I think in terms of the actual vector databases, I think we have evaluated a couple of products and we are just choosing the right product. I think the one exciting thing about the agentic architecture is you can actually use fit for purpose
hmm,
tools instead of just sticking to one tool. You talked about like LLMs. Our model actually allows LLMs to be pluggable. So we could actually
hmm,
connect to OpenAI, we can connect to Claude, or if you want a private, like say open source like a Llama or anything like that, we also enable that using Bedrock. So we don't have to host it, but we host it in our account in AWS so that it's easy to use for our customers who don't want to use, say, OpenAI.
got it. So I want to shift the conversation to business for a second because I love the technology piece, but what you just said triggered me a bit because I was like, wait, if I'm going outside my firewall with my data, then security, all those questions come up. So Prat, the question I have for you is, what are the use cases of Prometheum? What is the role of AI? Are there use cases that have surprised you as you have talked to your clients?
Yeah. So just before I jump to the use cases like this, the question that you raised about the
Security.
security boundary of
Yep.
enterprise, that's a super important question. And so one of the ways with Prometheum, the way we address that is by basically fundamentally architecturally. So the whole idea being that we have this concept of an edge which sits within the customer's environment, whether it's their VPC in the cloud or on-prem, and no data actually leaves that boundary. It always stays there. All the compute's done there. The control plane lives in the Prometheum
I see.
account.
Yeah.
So essentially the metadata and the control plane, is in our VPC. And so even if there are LLM models, they never actually leave our boundary. And so we can give sort of a strict compliance and security, guarantees to the customers. So that's like just in terms of in general how this model works is I think and we've seen that this architecture works well for small customers, large customers, enterprises. In terms of use cases, to a large extent, what we've seen is smaller, it really depends on the sophistication of enterprises. Enterprises that are sophisticated enough where they have, delivered basic modernization, and now they're looking for more active reuse and governance. They are all in that data product space, which is, again, about data products, so I don't have to. But they're looking at data fabrics as a way to build data products. Then there's a class of customers that are looking for self-service analytics, which is what Durgesh was talking about, which is business wants fast insight. They're frustrated with CEOs because they're like, why is it taking so long? And modernization has a huge tax. So when people embark on modernization, which is basically like they've picked certain targets and they're moving the data, they're migrating, there's no oxygen left basically for them to actually figure out how to deliver data to the business. So that we see that as a very common use case where we are like the relief valve around modernization tax or modernization drag, where they're like, while I'm modernizing, I can instantly with this data fabric start to create insights and products for the business. And by the way, when I end up changing my landscape shifts, at that point, this instant data fabric is still super relevant to me because it's agnostic to where my data is, right? So we're seeing that as a use case. We're seeing a lot of operational use cases where people are, I have data sitting here, I have data sitting there. And when something happens here and I want to take decisions here, the fabric's a great example of spanning this. So we've seen that for manufacturing. We've seen that in like when the supply chain decisions that need to be made. We've seen interest in general with financial services and insurance companies where they have to make decisions based on conditions like weather conditions and things like that. We've seen interest in healthcare, where particularly this fabric is super important because again, data is distributed and they have to make decisions across heterogeneous data. We have obviously seen a lot of interest even in hospitality, when you're thinking about customers and loyalty and you got to make those decisions. So in general, I would say this is very much the main ICP for us is a large enterprise with a lot of complexity of data that's trying to move fast. And the challenge is that the friction of the data just gets in the way.
Got it.
So
So,
utility example, by the way.
yeah, by the way, are there examples like actual client? I know I'm putting you and Durgesh on the spot a lot, but others, can you give with a name, some a client, so we can, I'm literally just trying to visualize, because I'm also very concerned that I'm hearing from large companies that they're not getting ROI from the AI use cases. They're worried about hallucinations. So that's why I'm just trying to understand, what are you seeing and how are people actually benefiting, like tangible benefits of using Prometheum Data Fabric, and who are these clients?
Yeah. So some of our clients we can't name. It's just more for NDA
Yeah.
reason, anything else. But Royal Holidays is a customer. Builders is an insurance customer. Like, so if you look at most of our customers, and we have customers in pretty much every vertical now.
Hmm.
And so if you look at them, the ROI is typically based on two models. It's either a cost reduction model. Uh, so cost reduction as in, hey, I'm spending all this money on figuring out how to modernize and move to a certain platform.
Hmm.
Uh, and I'm not getting enough velocity because I'm stuck in that. That's going to be a 2-year project, right? I have SIs, I have this vendor I've committed all this thing to. Well, but it's also my job, and I got to make sure I deliver value to the business. So we have seen that by deploying Promethium on top, you can actually reduce the cost of some of these modernization projects because you're fundamentally reducing the amount of data that you have to move. So there's cost associated with that. That's number one. And this is typically in larger companies. In smaller companies that are not as sophisticated, they are embarking on modernization. They have to invest heavily in the modern data stack. The modern data stack is really complicated, expensive, requires expertise. In many cases, they will look at the data fabric, the instant data fabric, and say, wait a minute, you have enough in this architecture for me to give an end-to-end self-service analytics to the business because you can go access this distributed data. You already have a built-in active catalog. You have some transformation capabilities. So basically, there's enough to be able to get unified access, to be able to do discovery, access, create insights, and publish them to like a BI tool. So they look at it as essentially a way to get started before they jump into the full modern data stack. And with us, they can do that, and then they can introduce the modern data stack under us over time. So it's either cost reduction play or cost avoidance play. We have not, in our case, we have not seen the AI slowdown because we don't look at this as we look at this as AI is under the hood being used to solve a business problem versus like going into an innovation area where you're like, imagine if the AI could solve these kind of problems
Yeah.
and whole hallucination, governance, all of those concerns. Basically, the data fabric is intended to solve them. So for us, that's a really big part of what the
That,
scope
yeah.
is. Because we are
That,
applying context to reduce
yeah.
those level answers.
That's a great point because data fabric inherently is working at the semantic layer. And Durgesh had briefly mentioned the idea of graph, I'm assuming knowledge graph. So that's how you reduce your hallucination because then you have more context for data for the LLM to do its job.
Yeah,
So so,
absolutely.
Prat, I have one more question for you because you talked quite a bit about cost avoidance and cost reduction. How do clients pay for your product?
So our business model is actually quite simple. It's a platform fee for the data fabric.
Hmm.
And as data teams jump on the platform and start to build data products, there is an end user fee, which is tied to the number of data teams, whether they're power users or business explorers or data analysts. So it's a combination of the platform fee and the usage fee. So a lot of it is about how you're scaling, how many places you're applying, what of, and all of this is sitting in your cloud account tied to your usage. So it's a you're not paying expensive SaaS fees or those kind of things. So relatively easy for enterprises to scale.
Got it. Okay. Durgesh, what's on your roadmap?
Excited to talk about the roadmap. So
Okay.
I think, especially I want to talk about the copilot because that's the new initiative that we have been
Hmm.
working on. So our immediate goal is, I would say, maybe a 90-day roadmap is to get this copilot in the hands of our customers. We want to launch a public trial. We already have a private preview, and which we are again test driving with many of our friendly customers, data analysts, and so on. But to get that out as quickly as possible, because I think what we need to get feedback on is the copilot is again there to assist you in creating the data products, and that means that we need to continuously improve the agents to gather more and more rich context, and this can only happen if we can actually get this out the door as quickly as possible. I think making sure that the copilot gets smarter as it actually interacts with you, as it understands your data, so that it's not only just for data analysts to ask questions and get answers, but also it can actually guide you, or it can recommend what kind of insights you could actually get, whether it's about cost saving, the data that doesn't need to be moved, security issues that you should be worried about. So I think trying to get this really easy to use user experience in the hands of the customers, that's the biggest thing on my roadmap.
If I could add one more thing, Sajid, to this, just in terms of like why we thought the copilot was important, because I know that lots of products that will actually add a copilot to this, but
Correct.
we look at this as a little bit more fundamental in our space. Because if you look at how, again, back to this thing of data fabric, data products, who uses them, and the consumption problem, what we've seen is that the power users will use the data fabric to get it connected to different sources, to do the work, to bring context, and maybe build some foundational data products. For every one of those power users, there's probably 10 business users or non-technical data team users, right, analysts that want access to that data and want to participate in that ecosystem. And today, if you look at it, we've talked to a variety of customers, but there's a huge backlog because nobody wants to bother the data engineers, right? The data engineers are busy building pipelines, and so you can't just go to them and ask an arbitrary question because they'll be like, go away, like this is not important, right? And so it's one of those things that we've heard where it's the unknown unknown, which is nobody knows where the next gem is in terms of the question that people want. And so people are not innovating fast enough because of that. And with AI, that's not going to work anymore because the business is a lot more impatient now. So the copilot, wow, like I'm getting all these background Zoom things.
AI
Anyway,
there for you.
my point is that the copilot was fundamental to us because we saw that this has not been done before, which is that for that relatively non-technical data team, business user or an analytics engineer, for example, they have a lot of rich ideas. They're close to the business. They know what they're looking for. If you could empower them in a way where it's an interactive experience, and unlike most copilots which slide out on the side and give you suggestions, this is think of it like a full notebook that's embedded, and it's the main screen. And so again, you'll see a demo of this by Monday when it goes live. But essentially, so you're sitting on there and you're literally asking questions, and your questions could start with saying, like, I have no idea what data I have. And this will tell you what the data is. Then you're like, oh, looks interesting. Then you can ask basic English questions like, tell me, when has this been used? And then it'll go and give you those answers. And then you can actually go much more sophisticated and you can say, now build me a data product that combines this and this. It'll essentially give you the SQL code. Then you can say, explain this code to me. And it explains the code to you.
Oh, wow.
Then you will be like, okay, so visualize this for me, test this for me, publish this for me. So the whole journey is essentially in a single notebook. And it's not a single shot model anymore, because if it comes back with answers, you'll be like, no, I didn't mean revenue in this thing. I meant revenue in number of units. And then it will basically go and again give you those things. So we think this experience has been missing. Because it's the human reinforcement that is applied during the session itself by the end user. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love the way you are putting it across. It's like I'm literally having a conversation with data. Data's talking to me. I can talk all day, but data never talks to me. It just sits there silently, but now all of a sudden it's a two-way thing. So
And again, like what Durgesh is going to pull off in the next 90 days is pretty amazing. But
I
the
see.
long-term thing is even more exciting because now you could be literally like, okay, now you know what? I have this question. This thing comes back saying, by the way, I can't answer because that data is not in your domain or it's in a different system. Then you're like, can you go connect to that domain? Imagine this again, there was an agent that got fired up that said, okay, I'm going to go connect with that source. And you don't have the credentials for that source, but I'll start a workflow that gets this thing going. You got a ticket in your inbox, you go and say yes, now you got access to it. So the whole state in a session can be saved. I mean, you guys have got Notebook LM, but the point is that this whole session now can be saved. And once it's saved, I can come back to it and say, you know what, I want to start working on that session again. And now you're just building, and you can share that session too. So the power of the this is not your, like, your grandfather's copilot, right? If you
Mm,
will. This is basically like, we struggle with, like, do we call it a copilot? Do we call it something else? We stuck to the copilot because it's a familiar concept and easy to get
yeah.
in. Fundamentally, it can allow all the data team people to become data heroes, right?
It's a butler. I have a butler for my data now. You need a cool name for your co-pilot. You know? So
Yes. I'll give you royalty if you can come up with something cool.
sounds great. So since we are, in ending this podcast, I have, by the way, a million questions about open source and your views about AI, but I think we let's stop here. I'm very curious, if you were not doing Prometheum, what would you be doing? What's your secret passion,
I can tell
Prat?
you, this is a pattern. So Durgesh, people don't know this, but Durgesh runs 100 miles.
No way. You run 100 miles?
That's what I would be doing. I mean, in fact, I mean, I would not rather be doing anything, but I mean, this be in this exciting space. But yes,
Yeah.
running the mountains is my passion.
So not just 100 miles, but in the mountains.
Hopefully, so. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Okay.
and my thing is just doing startups because they're fun, and so I don't think I would be doing anything else. So it's
I
really.
know you're a serial entrepreneur, but if you were not, like, what do you do for fun, if I may? So,
Um, well, I have a lot of other interests: sports, music. I'm actually, I love Indian classical music. I play tabla, which is a
no
percussion
way.
instrument, Indian percussion instrument. So yeah, I
Oh,
spend
wow.
time doing things like
I have to come to one of your concerts. So, yeah. On that note, thank you so much. This was amazing because we talk about data fabric, data products. As I said earlier, people are still confused, but I think we're starting to see a physical manifestation of these concepts actually come alive in a product. And I'm super excited for the journey you both are on. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Sanjeev.
Thanks, Sanjeev. Great to be here.
Yep.
Thank
Bye.
you. Till next time, everyone. So great you joined us. Thanks. Bye.